Jumpin' In on Manx Radio.
With Howard and Chris Kane.
Hello.
Good evening.
And welcome. And here we are again, almost frozen out in the boondocks, but not quite. We still got into the studio, which is good news, because it has been International Women's Day this week, which means it's an excellent excuse to play some of the best modern and contemporary jazz players here on Jumpin' In with myself, H.
And me, Chris. Yes, as we focus on women in jazz, with International's Women's Day being a little earlier in the week, as H said, the inspiration for which came as far back as 1910. And indeed it was celebrated the following year. But let's not forget, the Isle of Man led the world by taking the bold step at the time of introducing votes for women as far back as 1881, some 40 years ahead of the UK. Women in jazz, however, have always had pretty much equal rights here on Jumpin' In, and we hope to celebrate that on tonight's show. So, H, with the world as your oyster, which international ladies of jazz have grabbed your attention this week, other than Anna and Elsa from Frozen, as the Snow Queen has obviously had her way with the Isle of Man?
Well, there are so many to choose from. I could have gone back to Ella and Billy and all the rest of it, and I was tempted, I must admit. I stayed at the more modern end of the spectrum, as in the last 40 or 50 years. Norma Winston, I've been a fan of hers since I first heard her, and I go back to one of her classics with Azimuth, Sidsel Anderson, two vocalists. Changed for me. I'm not a great vocalist fan normally, but you know what? Change is as good as the rest, and I'm being bang up to date with Likish Benjamin.
And from me, well, we start beating our own drum in DC. We redefine with Rebecca. We start at the end with a loved relative. And to get things rolling, you're in a party mood. Here's Seven Aeneas from the Gaia Wilmer Large Ensemble. A fabulous project, this, from saxophonist-composer Gaia Wilmer. Folia, the music of Egberto Gismonti. Originally coming from Florianopolis.
Florianopolis. Sounds good. I have no idea where it is.
In Brazil, yes. She studied international relations for a degree, picking up the saxophone when studying part of the course, looking at the relationship between reason and passion and the balance of this with art. An opportunity came up for her to sub in an alto seat with a band playing a concert with Egberto, and he then went on to support her application for Berkeley. Then studying masters in composition, she got a grant for a number of concerts. She expected to be 4 for her arrangements of Egberto's work with her large ensemble. The concerts grew to 16, which she thought that was a fantastic thing to do, even enhanced further. If you thought that piano playing was fabulous, that was because the man himself wanted to be part of the project. So Egberto on piano there, and he features on guitar on other tracks on a very, very good double album. And the album, as I say, is dedicated entirely to his work, Folia, the music of Egberto Gismonti.
Terrific stuff, and the man himself still going, I believe, doing teaching. You don't see him touring quite so much now, Egberto, I don't think. We haven't seen him for a long time, but I believe he's still teaching, does a lot in Brazil, maybe.
But this big band only recorded in the last year or so obviously
his music, yeah, fantastic, and still marvellous stuff, pianist and on guitar, which has always been my favourite. Another favourite over the years, of course, for me, or for us, I dare say, has been the great vocalist Norma Winston. Still going strong, I'm delighted to say. Just a new album just out, I think, with an Italian pianist. Can't think of the name off the top of my head, but she's done 2 or 3 now on the ECM label. Back in the day, well, she used to sing with the likes of Michael Garrick, with Ian Carr as well, as we were just saying earlier on, and of course was Azimuth most famously. Has always been a massive fan, still really enjoy the music. Difficult to know where to choose, just that wonderful vocalese she did so effectively, where she was actually using her voice as an extra instrument rather than just singing the lines of a song or singing the words of a song. It wasn't just a accompanist with a vocalist, it was actually using her voice instead of perhaps another horn or a guitar or whatever the case may be. Did it so effectively. A lot of the tunes are really, really long on some of the Azimuth tracks, 10-15 minutes or more, but here's a lovely one called Mayday from the Touchstone album. Terrific stuff. Azimuth from Touchstone. John Taylor on piano there. Norma Winston on voice. Kenny Wheeler, of course, trumpet. Or flugelhorn there by the sound of... No, maybe, I think it was trumpet on second thoughts. I think it was more trumpet than flugelhorn on that, but he plays both on the album from, I think, the 1970s it was recorded, just flipping through for a recording date and can't actually see one at the moment. But yeah, a great example there of how Norma Winston used the voice as a... It's not there, it's not a case of, oh yeah, here's piano, bass, drums and a vocalist or whatever. It is her just using her voice as a third instrument in the trio. So effectively it blends in, you almost don't notice she's singing sometimes. Wonderful stuff, always loved her, still going strong. And yeah, plenty of albums if you haven't come across her work before to dip into one of the gems, I think, of British jazz. And for me, as someone who's not a great fan of the jazz vocal, male or female, it's always nice to have someone to sort of prove the point that, you know, if you dig around enough, you'll find someone you like. Terrific stuff.
Yes, and as you say, with that Italian trio still releasing...
Still going, yeah.
Good new tracks today. Next from me, a drummer whose work I've long admired. Coming from a very musical family, growing up with a classical pianist as a mum and a classical organist as a grandmother, and her sister's an opera singer. I think perhaps not surprising that Alison Miller was musical. What is more surprising is that she chose the drums at the early age of 10, and after graduating, she then moved to Washington, to New York, and started work as a session musician. Now with some 30 plus albums behind her and 10 or so in her own name. Here's one of her bands who I really enjoy, Boom Tick Boom, from her 2017 album Otis Was a Polar Bear. Here's Fuster. Starting off with a decidedly klezmer vibe, that was Fuster, and I'm not complaining. This is a great album, interesting lineup, Jenny Scheinman on violin and octave violin, Kirk Knoof on cornet, Ben Goldberg clarinet and contra-alto clarinet, Todd Sickafus on the bass, Myra Melford on the piano, and of course Alison Miller on the drums. She's also part of the all-female supergroup Artemis, who we have featured on the show. That's not to say that Boom Tick Boom aren't pretty super too.
Super indeed. You are listening to Jumpin' In, the best in modern and contemporary jazz with Chris and myself, H, and it's all about the women. It was International Women's Day earlier in the week, of course, so we thought we'd celebrate some of the women in modern jazz. Been women in jazz for years, of course, perhaps no more so. Maybe in recent years, though, you hardly can turn a page of a book or look online for something without another brilliant young composer or player or both quite often coming up. None more so than one of the women of the moment, Lakeisha Benjamin, who's hotly tipped to become one of the big stars on the modern scene of late, hailing out of stateside, alto sax player and composer. Her fourth studio album, Phoenix, came out at the beginning of the year to a great acclaim, a real sort of tour de force. And I must admit, I have really enjoyed it as well. I can see why people are enjoying it so much. Expansive, it's been described as. Loads of guest stars. It was produced by another fantastic woman of modern jazz, the multi-Grammy award-winning Terry Lynn Carrington, and has, well, you name it, a who's who of curated guests: Diane Reeves, Georgia Ann Muldrew, Patrice Rushen, Sonia Anches, Angela Davis, and the late, great Wayne Shorter. The band itself, well, I'll tell you about them in a minute. Let's hear the opening track from the album, American Skin.
Revolutionary hope resides precisely among those women who have been abandoned by history. This is not the way things are supposed to be. This might be the way they are now, but they are not supposed to be this way. I truly believe, and men should applaud this, that this is the era of women.
that which may leave a scar. Say once, step into the story, finding guidance in our mirrors, gestures for our mystery, a home for our hunger, a word for the silent. In our quest for that which may leave a scar. We namesay one crooked finger in turn towards the heart, and broken vows that Judas keeps, the kiss of life to what is lost forever. Now catch up and vivid, forever. Now catch up and vivid, forever. In our
I've loved that. It's been on repeat for a good number of years since it came out in 1994. Sidsel Endresen on her album Exile, with Django Bates, never more effective on piano and tenor hall, then Nils Petter Mulvar on trumpet, the great, late now sadly, Jon Christensen on drums and percussion, Jens Bugge Vesseltoff, or just Bugge Vesseltoff as he goes by now, on keyboards, and David Darling, who I think passed away as well, if memory serves correct, on cello on some albums, on a track just called Quest. Always liked her singing. It's almost semi-poetic, half singing, half chanting, half... Oh, it's just a wonderful voice. Saw her live once at the Jazz Cafe many years ago, and terrific stuff it was too. Before that, the woman of the moment, as I said, alto sax star Lakeisha Benjamin on her latest album on Whirlwind Records, which is called Phoenix, came out at the end of January, and I said I'd tell you the rest of the band. So the band is composed of trumpeter Josh Evans, Victor Gould on keys, Orange Rodriguez on synths, and drummer Enoch E.J. Strickland, along with percussionist Naguer Santos and the bass player Ivan Taylor. Wallace Roney also on the trumpet, and the Rhodes organist Anastasia Petrova and Jamal Nichols all joined for one track each throughout the album. Well worth checking out on Whirlwind, that one. I have to say the cover does nothing for me. Most bizarre. Her dressed in gold, in a sort of gold suit, hanging out with a gold cape on and white thigh boots and gold sparkly Don't know, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe she's meant to be a phoenix, or perhaps it's just the look she likes. Does nothing for me. The front cover, no mistaking the music, is brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could well be her own taste. I know we thought it was a bit out there with Connie Han, but she very much is her own woman and absolutely wears her own taste in clothing. Next from me, a lady who we haven't met, but a British pianist and composer whose latest album has been garnering high praise in all the jazz press, Rebecca Nash. Lauded as a rising star, she was asked to compose an original suite back in 2019 for the Bristol Jazz Festival. Her debut with her band Atlas, Peaceful King, had just been released, and was a tightly composed set of compositions of chamber jazz with a clean sound decorated with very subtle electronics. The new work was jointly inspired by the tone row style of composition employed by sax player John O'Gallagher and the relationship between the atomic numbers of 6 rare earth materials. From Redefining Element 78, here's Rhodium. That was Rhodium from Rebecca Nash's latest release, redefining Element 78. Rhodium, if you're interested, is of course Element 45 and is a silvery metal with one natural isotope and is actually more expensive than gold, roughly twice the price. Really good album this, but that just about rounds things up for this week's show. I'm sure we've left you in no doubt the girls can play every bit as much flair, fire and imagination as the boys in this wonderful musical playground of jazz, and long may it continue.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are so many great players to go and check out. We could have had Jessica Williams. We could have dropped in as well. Terry Lynn Carrington, I say, she's got a new one out, I think, New Standards. There are some brilliant players out there at the moment. Trish Clues, another been featured on the show before, of course. Laura Jerd, the list goes on and on.
But keep up with Jumpin' In. You'll find we've always got plenty of room for the ladies here on Jumpin' In Jazz Manx Radio. Well, we've just got time to fit in this very short track from the debut release of Dearest Sister, a Swedish quintet of 3 women and 2 men led by singer-keyboardist Andrea Hansmassa and pianist Eva Almotraz. The album is called Collective Heart, and this is Intro. See you next week.
Look out for any icy patches. Be good.
Bye for now.